Hi, my name is Josh Rosenfeld, and today I'll be showing you how to make an old-fashioned cocktail. Now, I chose to demonstrate this topic because I've recently started bartending for an events company, and I believe that everyone who enjoys a drink every so often should have a favorite cocktail that they know how to order at any bar or can make for themselves at home. So, even though not everyone will like an old-fashioned, it's important to know that any drink can be modified or personalized. You can substitute a key ingredient for any alternative and take your own creative direction by making something that you enjoy. Now, getting into a little bit of history about the old fashioned and the cocktail in general. In 1806, a reader of a New York State newspaper requested an explanation of what a cocktail was. One of the editors explained that a cocktail was a mixture of spirit, sugar, bitters, and water. The reason that water was an ingredient instead of ice at the time was ice was extremely expensive and refrigeration units for the ice were also very expensive, and the only other alternative was shipping ice from overseas. So, fast forwarding to 1862, a very famous bartender named Jerry Thomas wrote a book called The Bartender's Guide. This included a bunch of innovative cocktails with some new spirits and liqueurs, which were being brought into America in the mid 1800s. This book also included a recipe for the old fashioned. It was actually made with more common spirit of the time, which was gin, but it ends up calling for a whiskey. The first old fashioned was created in the 1860s at the Pendennis Gentlemen's Club in Louisville, Kentucky. The drink was said to be made in honor of Colonel James E. Pepper, who was an esteemed bourbon distiller at the time. And during this time, the new liqueurs and new spirits were inspiring very creative and fruity and colorful cocktails. So it is said that somebody sat down in the bar in the Pendennis Club and asked the bartender to make him a drink the old-fashioned way, which is where we get the name. Now, throughout the years since then, the old-fashioned became less popular during times like Prohibition, when worse quality liquors were more common. And due to the rise and fall of the old-fashioned's popularity, there are many different variations of the drink. It's existed for over 150 years, so each time period boasts a different version of the cocktail, but with the same main idea of the original definition of a cocktail: spirit, sugar, bitters, and water. So, today I will be making my version of the cocktail using the same techniques used in the making of the original cocktail. So if you Google how to make an old-fashioned, you will see a similar recipe to what I will make today, but I will show you where the techniques of the original cocktail come into play. Okay, so to make the old-fashioned, we're going to start off with a rocks glass here. This one has a heavy bottom, which is good for drinks that you have to muddle something into the bottom to. So we're going to start off with a bar spoon or a teaspoon of granulated sugar. Now, traditionally, this would call for a sugar cube, which is a lot harder to find, so we're just going to use regular white sugar. Next, we're going to want to soak the sugar in the bottom of the glass with dashes of bitters. Generally, it would call for Angostura bitters, which I have right here. I also have some cardamom bitters, which are good for the fall time, even though it's still warm out. We'll put it in anyway. So, to soak the sugar, you're going to want to do 4 dashes of Angostura bitters, 2, 3, 4. And then we'll do about 3 to 4 dashes of these cardamom bitters just for a little extra kick. Now you can see that the sugar is starting to soak with the bitters. They're getting completely brown. And at this point, non-traditionally, but something that helps the sugar dissolve a little bit easier, would be to add a splash of soda water or a splash of tonic water, which is what I have. Doesn't really matter, just the carbonation helps the sugar to dissolve. So a splash of the soda water, and then I'll show you. We're going to muddle all these ingredients: the bitters, the sugar, and the soda water, and it should become a little bit frothy. And after that, we're ready to put in our whiskey. So traditionally, it calls for a rye whiskey, but I'm going to be using a small batch bourbon, and that's just up to personal preference. I like the bourbon notes a little bit better in an old fashioned. So we've got 2 ounces of our bourbon right into the glass. Nothing yet, no ice, just in the glass. And we're going to give that a quick little mix just to get the sugar a little bit more dissolved into the cocktail. So next is time to add our ice. Now I'm going to be using a large ice cube, which helps with keeping the drink less diluted. So a smaller ice cube or smaller pieces of ice are going to dilute in the drink very quickly, and they're going to make a watery drink. So when you stir a large ice cube up to temperature, once it gets to that desired temperature, it will stay there for a longer period of time, and your drink will be less diluted. So while I'm stirring that, you probably want to stir that for about 30 seconds. And next, after we finish stirring that, you can see that the glass is becoming more cold on the outside, which means we're getting up to temperature. Next, we're going to take an orange, and we're going to get the peel of an orange. We're going to take that, and what we're going to do is we're going to express the oils that are in the skin of the orange. We're going to express that onto the drink, so you just want to squeeze on the outside, which I'm going to do down here. Squeeze it, and then for a little extra note, you can rub the orange around the rim, the outside of the inside of the glass, and then just throw that baby right in there. And then we're going to top it off with a maraschino cherry, which is not the same as your red maraschino cherries. It is a Luxardo maraschino cherry, very dark, very sweet, very delicious. So we're just going to top our old fashioned off with that cherry. And there you have it. That is an old fashioned.